ICQ Podcast episode 309, Propagation Tools and Validating Contests. Well, hi everyone, welcome to my fellow Amateur Ham Radio enthusiasts. This is episode 309 of the ICQ Amateur Ham Radio podcast. This episode is supported by Jim Thompson, 2E0 Foxtrot Oscar Alpha, along of course with our very valued monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, our companion show here between our normal episodes, we're completing the interviews we had from Hamfest 2019, where we'll be talking to Steve Nicol regarding propagation and Simone Wilson in relation to the RSGB Contest validation scheme. So say guys, hopefully something for you all to enjoy, contesters or people who enjoy just working their radar. There's something for you to get your teeth into in this show. Well, as I mentioned, our donors episode is Jim Thompson. Jim gracefully accepted my apologies because I missed him a couple of weeks back when he donated. So he met us at Hamfest and it was great to meet him there. And he said the podcast really makes his daily commute fly by. As well as being highly informative, it keeps me abreast of current news and gives me a smile. All the presenters are great. A long may it continue. He looks forward to episode 400 and beyond. Well, you know, Jim, the way we're going at the moment, it could get there quite quickly. I don't even notice the monthly. I didn't notice the monthly donation, and would encourage others who benefit from listening to click and donate. So, as I say, he finds value in the show basically, and say the donation, will help us out along the way. Production of this quality takes real effort, and I know, Dad, you spend a lot of time on production, and the dedication is worth supporting for the continued benefit as a relatively niche community. Thanks, and 73 cents from Jim 2E0. Foxtrot Oscar Alpha. Jim, thank you very much. I say that your donation, your subscription donation, along with the others as well, you pay our way, as we always say. It saves us advertising domain names, meat boxes, mattresses, and God knows what else podcasts advertise, and means we can get on with the show and get you great content without stopping for advertising along the way. So we're going to head off to our announcements now, and we've just come back from RSGB HF Convention, or Convention as it's now called, shall I say, and the 2019 construction competition winners were announced, and in the innovation category, Mike Willis, Golf 0 Mike Juliet Whiskey, won for his dual band feed system. In the construction category, John Kwame, G3 X-Ray Delta Yankee, one for his solid state amplifiers for 2 meters, 77 and 23 centimeters. And in the software category, Heather Lamond, Mike 0 Hotel Mike Oscar, one for her DATV receiver. And in final category, in the supported encouraging beginners category, Kevin Iris Golf 8 Mike X-Ray Victor for his magnetic loop antenna controller. Kevin was also the overall competition winner, and he received the Pat Hawker G3 Victor Alpha trophy. So congratulations to everyone there who took part in this year's construction competition, and I'm sure fun was had by all, showing off their wares, Dad. So certainly a good one there. But I know you've got some news here of a new magazine coming in the States.
The ARRL are about to launch a new online magazine in January. The ARRL launched this magazine, they say, 2020. It'll be published bi-monthly, and it'll offer new information for beginners and intermediate radio amateurs to kind of fresh ideas and try and get things forward. So could be an interesting magazine. The goal of the magazine is this is a new magazine and a virtual resource in helping new and newer radio amateurs to get active and involved in radio communications. So that's a good thing. As I say, the magazine is going to be, I think, from what I can read in the news press release, is going to be available free of charge to ARRL members. And once again, it ships, or it's downloadable in January 2020. So that'll be a good one, Colin.
Yeah, it certainly sounds so. And as I say, it'd be interesting to have a look at a copy if we might be able to get our hands on one here on this side of the ponds. Well, we're keeping in the States here, and as I say, this is a story which has dropped for us between episodes, and we've not really got to it yet, and in some respects, thank God we haven't, because it stopped us putting any opinion out on this one in an ever-changing story. But I was speaking to a UK dealer the other day, and he was very worried about the effects that the confusion caused in California over the opportunity of amateur radio repeater mountings, and the effect it could have on the amateur radio hobby in the States if this rolled out across the board. And he was certainly worried and confused about how this might affect the Parity Act and etc. Now, thankfully, this has evolved and grown legs in every direction at the moment. But what it seems to be, from what I can ascertain for this story at the moment, the fact is there was a claim that the repeaters were being taken off the air in California, especially for use on emergency services, and supporting in that sort of Aries type of situation. Now, my understanding is this evolved is the fact that actually is in relation to one site, and that site was actually outside the state of California, but obviously directing back into the state, and that was maybe where some of the confusion arose. Now, at the same time as well, there has also been some discussions in relation to how the hobby and Aries, etc., can get involved with the California department, and how they can keep their relevance, etc., and how they might work with their existing communication in place. So we've got some information we're going to post on icqpodcast.com as it goes a bit more detail. It's a very evolving story, very difficult to necessarily stake definitive facts on this one, and I would certainly love to hear from any of our listeners in the California area that can give us a bit more information on this one, being close by, etc. Because this certainly, on the face of it, sounded very, very worrying, but as it's evolved, just seems very, very confused. So I say, but certainly, as I say, guys, that might give you a bit of background in what some of the thoughts are going around here at the moment, and that while worrying times on the face of it, maybe not as bad as it first sound, I would suggest.
No, often we have to wait and see how the dust settles on a lot of these things, Colin, before we get too overexcited. So, yeah, I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
My next news story, if you're living in the UK, you can apply, and a club, you can apply to run a GB19 YOTA. In December, the RSGB is making the call sign available to clubs and groups of people to use the call sign throughout the month December to allow the youth to get on the air. Now, ideally, they're looking for you to run HF, VHF and UHF. The operators should be 26 or younger. And it's aimed at trying to get radio clubs, schools, scouts, guides, cadet groups, etc. on the air. So if you're interested, you can apply to find out more at rsgb.org/YOTA-month. And it could be an interesting project. You can operate in three blocks, so they've effectively said you don't have to be on all the time. They're talking about 0 to 11:59 UTC, then 1200 to 17:59 UTC, and finally 1800 to 23:59 UTC. So each day there are 3 sessions that you could apply to get the call sign. So in fairness, if you are interested of running a youth event in December, I suggest you contact the RSGB. Back to you, Colin.
Yeah, so as I say, guys, that wraps up our announcements for this episode. So now we're going to head over to our features. A couple of features here for you. With Steve Nicol in relation to Propagation Tools. Some of you may mention Steve used to kindly donate his propagation report to us in the past, so it's great to have Steve back on the show. And Simone Wilson from the RSGB Contesting Group talking about how they validate the competitions that they have in the UK with the RSGB, and certainly some good information in both of these. Particularly the one with contest propagation, does lend itself a little bit to video, so YouTube channel, so youtube.com/ICQ podcast may be a good source to check out that video as well, as always there. But as I say, links in the ICQpodcast.com page for you. And as always, guys, we hope you enjoy our features.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Well, we're coming to the end of this Hamfest, and I've just caught up with Steve. I haven't seen Steve in a long time. Steve's course on his K0KYA, and Steve used to, if you guys remember, used to do a propagation report for us and let us run his podcast within ours. But how are you doing, Steve?
Hi, I'm okay. We've been quite busy at the show. Lots of interest in what's going on, and we're promoting some of the RSGB propagation tools that are now available and talking about the current state of the sunspot cycle. So that's not very good news, actually, but there we go.
So there is a sunspot cycle?
Apparently, yes. We are at sunspot minimum, or very close to sunspot minimum. The experts say that it'll maybe kick off again next June 2020. And the next cycle is predicted to be very similar to the last one. So not a particularly good cycle, not a particularly bad cycle, certainly not a Maunder minimum that some people have been talking about, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, we did SSB Field Day a couple of weeks ago, and in fairness, you know, the bands were dead. We were working very few UK stations, but we still did over 300, something like 320 contacts, mainly out into Eastern Europe. But so the bands aren't totally dead, are they?
The bands are never totally dead. It's a case of finding the right band at the right time and with the right mode. At the moment, because conditions are so poor at times, you've got to really look at CW, you've got to look at FT8 to get the contacts. I mean, I contacted the Falkland Islands last week on 10 metres FT8. I mean, if somebody had told me that you could work the Falklands on 10 metres in September, I would have said no way. But that's what you can do. At the same time, you know, you've got to go where the DX is, and probably sometimes you're not going to go much above 20 metres, but it's there, and you just have to work at it. Also, you've got to pick the right times, and this is where propagation studies comes into it. At the moment, today, we're having a geomagnetic storm. The conditions are really bad, not good at all. Yesterday was actually quite good because we got a bit of a pre-auroral enhancement before that storm, so you would have said yesterday that probably conditions were very good.
But with FT8s, one of my friends who lives on Cyprus said, at least I'm operating HF. I've got all this HF gear that I've spent a lot of money on, and FT8 is allowing me to use my gear instead of packing it up. So that's a good thing.
I think I've changed my opinion. I used to be very anti-FT8, thought it was killing amateur radio, but in times of low sunspot activity, you know, you either get on the radio and work FT8 or you work nothing. It's up to you. I think you've got to fish where the fish are, you know, and this is what's going on at the moment. And you can make contacts with FT8.
Yeah, so that's good. So you've got some new products that the RSGB you're going to tell us about, the propagation products. So what the first one?
Well, the first one is really something called Propi for Radcom. What we've had for a long time, obviously, is propagation predictions in Radcom, and they're based on 100 watt sideband to a dipole. Now, people were saying, well, yeah, but I've got a 3-element stepper and a kilowatt. I can do way better than this. And other people with QRP were saying, well, I can't work anything that's in there. So there's nothing we could really do about Radcom. We looked at different ways, but decided in the end to go online. So we got the programmer who produced VOACAP for us, Yari OH6BG, and he's come up with an online tool which is accessible from the RSGB website. So you go in, you say, well, I'm running this amount of power, this amount of gain is on my antenna, and I'm going to be running FT8, CW, whatever. And it will give you a month's worth of propagation predictions, which are basically tailored to your needs and your station. We've also done the same thing with a program called ITU RHF Prop, which is an alternative model of the ionosphere, and they've done the same. So you've got two tools there that will give you propagation predictions just for your station.
So that's interesting because, you know, as you say, if you are a QRP operator, it's not going to be the same as if you're running, 400 watts in the UK. So it's got to be interesting. It's got to be horses for courses. Yeah. So that's quite good, I think.
Yeah, I think we needed to come up with something for people, and this is what we've done, and I think it's working very, very well. So you tailor your predictions to your particular station. The other tool we've got is something called PropQuest, which is produced by Jim G0KYA. That shows you a real-time plot of the critical frequency, and from that you can work out, interpolate, or extrapolate actually, the maximum usable frequency over different path lengths, so you can see instantly, where you're going to likely get to. Then we've got another one called Propy, which will show you, we've got it running on a PC here, show you a plot of the world and where you're likely to work to on your particular band and your particular mode. So we've got a lot of new electronic or computer generated tools, so you don't have to download and install any software at all, just go on the web and get into them.
Yeah, well, that's a good use of the web, because as our hobby, I mean, I've been in it 20 years. I'm a new person to the hobby, 20 years. I've seen a lot of developments, but embracing the internet, embracing computers to do some of the things that used to take days to do, now we can actually see it on a screen almost in real time. So that's good.
Well, we've been lucky. We had some incredible programmers. Yari OH6BG has done a great job with the vocap-based one. James Watson in Saudi Arabia has done the Propy one for us. And then at WeatherQuest, they produced the PropQuest program that Jim Bacon designed, really. So it's not really down to me. I can come up with some of the ideas, obviously, but it's down to some fantastic programs who did it all free of charge for us.
Well, that's what it should be. In fairness, it is our hobby. We are a hobby. All right, I understand some people make a living out of our hobby, but in fairness, promoting our hobby and sharing is certainly what we all do.
Well, radio hams, the best word they like is free.
Oh, yeah. But that's what I say about the podcast. It's one of the few things you're going to get free when they come through the door. So, Steve, listen, show us some of your programs, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, this is the Propy program that's running, and we're just showing you an animation of 20-meter propagation over a 24-hour period.
Yeah. So that's looking interesting. So this is the number of dBs at the side. So, and this is the grey line going across.
Yeah, as you can see, there is no propagation overnight. There it goes, it will die out overnight, and then as soon as the sun comes up, propagation kicks in again, and this is 20 meters. The Propy tool that as Gwyn G0KYA has produced for us, and I think it's very useful. They're using this at the National Radio Centre at Bletchley Park because it's a great way of putting a big monitor on the wall and just showing propagation on an hour-by-hour basis.
That looks great. What's the other one I see behind us?
Well, this is just Whisper. We're showing that even though conditions are bad, you can make contacts. We've got a little aerial and 10 watts we're running from the site, actually here in the building. And yesterday we were getting over to the States, into Florida, into Georgia. Today conditions are not so good. There's been a geomagnetic disturbance, but we're still getting up into Finland and around Europe.
Yeah. Well, for those of you not going to see the video or listening on this audio, what Steve's talking about, a little antenna on 20 meters. I'm looking at it. It's a telescopic wick. I would have said it was more a 2 meter, set up for 2 meters, because it's not fully extended. And if you can do that, then inside a building that's predominantly metal, you're doing pretty well.
Well, we said always it's about choosing the right band and the right mode, and we're using Whisper, which is incredibly good for low power communications. And FT8 would probably do something very, very similar to this. You will make contacts, not necessarily on sideband, but you will make contacts if you've got the right mode.
That's good. So, Steve, a long time since we spoke to you. If people want to get hold of you, how do they find you? Websites, that sort of thing?
Well, my blog site is g0kya.blogspot.co.uk. A lot of propagation stuff on there, and you can contact me via that website.
That's good news. Listen, Steve, it's been a long time. Let's not make it as long next time. Thank you very much for your time.
Nice to see you.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Okay, I'm at the Hamfest up here in Newark on 2019 with Simone Wilson. We spoke to Simone before at the Radio Centre up at Bletchley Park. How are you doing, Simone?
I'm doing fine, thank you very much. And how are you today?
Yeah, well, I'm ducking and diving. It's coming to the end of the show, and I'm sure you're sort of wanting to get home as well. But it's been a great show, hasn't it?
It's been a wonderful show. Apart from a bit of weather yesterday, it really did rain cats and dogs.
Well, that's a polite way of putting it, but yes, I give you that one. So we're here today. You're checking contest logs, aren't you? You're checking entries that have come in.
Yes, that's exactly what I do. If you like, my volunteering for the Radio Society of Great Britain started off as a contest adjudicator, and I still do it. I've been doing it for 10 years, I think, now. So I thought I would like to demystify the process, to show people what is actually done. So I'm doing some live adjudication of a very recent contest, i.e. the Autumn Series 80-metre data contest that ran on Thursday, just gone.
Yeah, that's very good. Now, I must admit, I've never seen this done, and I jokingly said to you we weren't going to do this interview unless you told us how we did in SSB Field Day. But no, I was joking. But it must be quite a nightmare getting it all in, so take us through what you do.
Actually, it's not so much of a nightmare as you'd think. So everybody, when they submit their logs to the robot produces them and then presents the adjudicator with a list, and the list I've got on the screen here, and it shows the contestants' entries. It gives us a rough idea if there's a problem. So the first job that we always do is we look down this list and we look to see if in this area here, if these three columns, if there's any entries, because those will highlight a problem. Button, there we are. So what we've got here for an entrant PA4G, so we've got one from Holland. He's got QSO's number 17 and 36 and 4254, so that's a range. Yeah. And in that column, that means that he's got the wrong mode. Bearing in mind that our data contests in the Autumn Series, and of course exactly the same in the 80-metre CC data section, they're dual mode. So you've got PSK and PSK 63 now and RITI running side by side. So here what it's telling me is that this person has potentially not differentiated, but it's highlighting them, so that means that there's something not quite right. It's not either PS or RY that they've put in the mode thing. So I'll have a little look at that when I've downloaded it. Well, I did actually, and it turned out that he put PK in for the PSK mode when it should be PS.
So effectively, you allowed him it because it was an obvious typo error on his part and not trying to cheat.
Yes, I edited it for him so that it would work nicely. So once I've downloaded the logs, then I get them. I load them into the software, and I run up our adjudication software called AdjuQT, and I will go and look on the calendar for the contest I'm adjudicating, which in this case is the Autumn Series data for the 26th of September. I select the contest. You go into the adjudication settings to make sure that I apply penalties to naughty people, and the out by one is allowed. Because there's software problems. I also tick the little boxes for the output files that I want for post-contest checking. And when I do that, I then tell it where the files are, which is there, and then I hit go. Now, 35 seconds later, that contest is adjudicated. Automatically, all done. All it leaves is the poacher turned gamekeeper job to do, and that's the exciting bit for me.
Right. Well, it's interesting you got it all automated. I would have thought it was more manual, but looks very good.
There's a lot of automation in this now because the common errors or common things we're looking for, our programmer Mike has automated. But anything he's not sure of, he makes sure the computer then highlights it to the adjudicator to say, what's this about?
Right. So let's say all on interestingly. So you talk about poacher being gamekeeper. Explain that one.
Well, I'm a contester. Contesting is one of my things. We've all got our thing in this. Yeah. And contesting is one of my things. I love the social aspect of contesting, especially field day. and so on. It's wonderful. Go out for barbecue and beer in a field. What could be better? And so I've contested all my amateur career, and I got taken, roped into adjudicating, and that's it. And it's rather nice actually, because I know all the tricks and of the trade, or most of them, and so I can apply those tricks and so on to the adjudication process. Something's not right here, and you get this spider tingle sense, which tells you that something's off. And it has worked. I've caught a couple of cheaters in my time, which has been good fun.
Yeah, you're always going to get cheaters. I know from our club, we're not a serious contest club. We go out, we play radio, we thoroughly enjoy ourselves. And this year, SSB Field Day, we worked hardly any UK stations, lots into Germany and out that way. But there was still a lot on, even if we didn't hear UK stations.
Yeah, yes, of course. There are a lot on, but it's good. It's good fun, and it's just the aspect. The thing for me is, though, having chosen to adjudicate contests, I used to love doing the CC contests on 80 metres, but becoming an adjudicator meant that personally, I could no longer enter contests that I was adjudicating. That's just my point of view. Doesn't stop me contesting elsewhere, though.
No. I understand that, and in fairness, I understand why you can't go into contests if you're the final say on that. But there is a difference. Contesting can be fun. I'm not a big contester, and most people know that. But I'd have nothing against it. I've worked some great contests, and going along with the people that like to operate and just being in the background is also fun, isn't it?
Oh, it's fabulous. It is the social side of contesting that is perhaps the best. Although, one of the lovely things is a pile-up. Who doesn't want to work on, sit in a radio station going bang, 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 end of the cut of the chase, or you being a wanted station? You don't normally experience this at home, but in a contest you do experience high-speed operating, as it were. It doesn't matter if it's voice or CW or data mode, you still experience being chased and so on.
Yeah. Well, as I say, people know I don't do many contests, but I can understand the attraction, and it is great fun. We've done SSB Field Day a couple of weeks ago. That was great fun as a club. We had some new members of the club, some of which weren't licensed, but they thoroughly enjoyed the weekend.
Yeah, and that is what contesting is for me, is the social side, getting out in the field, putting up as best a radio station as you can, far better than you ever could hope for at home, unless you're lucky enough to have a 4-acre field as part of your property. Anyway, so that's it. Right, we're now in the position where we've now got to look at the results that have been calculated, because there are some contacts that need to be checked. Now, in most cases in the competition, I've received a log from two people who've worked each other. So that if you like, is properly confirmed contact by two-way. But many people come up and give points away in a contest. And they go through and they'll work through the band, work everybody on the way through, and then go off and go and have a cup of tea. And they don't bother to send their log in. But we can see these contacts because people do send them in on their logs and their entries, and we can reconstitute their logs from these people, and we call them fabricated logs. And that is where we spend all our effort now, is into the fabricated logs. And this software will bring all the fabricated logs up into a list. And what I do, and I look at the fabricated logs, I look for call signs is usually the one. So instantly I can see, remember this is an 80 metre contest. I've got A4 Alpha 4 Kilo Quebec Yankee. Well, we're not going to work Alpha 4 here on 80 metres, are we?
Definitely not working the States.
Not quite right there. So let's have a little look down the list. So let's just assume that A has been incorrectly decoded. So we'll look for a G instead. So a G0KYA. And when we get into the list, sure enough, in there is a G0KYA. It's in there. And now when I check back between these two, I can see that the A0KYA data submitted fits into the right place, except somebody else has got the data in there. So that meant there were two people thinking that one station was talking to them, but only one of them was being logged.
Yeah.
Very common in contesting.
Yeah. So I suppose because it's a data contest, and we don't do bit error correction on the data coming across, you will get genuine errors and not operator errors, because if you get a bit flip or something, it'll come out as a different character.
You can get, because in RITI you've got the letters and number shift, which so that it doubles the amount of codes that can be transmitted, numbers and letters, you see. But so sometimes that shift doesn't happen, and then you get a whole load of garbage. But it can be an occasion that just in Morse you can miss a dit, and it changes the character you've received. And the same can be true in RITI, that the computer's not hearing the one bit of the two-tone, and instead of G it got A, and so on. So and it's not operator error, because it's machine decoding here. It's not operators doing the decoding, although I have met one or two who can decode RITI before now.
Yeah, there's always those around. Many moons ago, when I was first in the computer industry, I knew a guy who literally could talk machine code, and so it doesn't surprise me people can decode RITI.
Yes, no, quite. So, the last bloke I knew could do it was G0KYA, Ron. He could decode RITI and have a conversation with you at the same time.
Sounds an interesting character.
Yeah, so I will go through this list looking for anomalies, things that say to me, that isn't right in the fabricated list. So that's call signs, malformed call signs. That is, I will have, there's an instance on here of two call signs where only one character is out, and they're side by side, so the last character is corrupted for one of them. But it's obvious which one it is, because it's only got one QSO as opposed to 6 or something like that, Yeah. So, and I just look through for these, because they're all allowed, these fabricated QSOs, unless I say no, and that's where I spend all my time. It's a couple of hours of gentle screen tapping and checking through, and occasionally, sometimes I have to email people, which will then hold up the results. But I can do the whole thing in about 2 hours.
Right. So once you finish this, what's the next process?
Once this is done, then I will rerun the adjudication cycle just to update the output results file. I will then upload those to the contest committee's website for them to have a look at. They're in draft form, so it goes for peer review. I will write do a little write-up on the contest, and then whatever my colleagues on the contest committee will come back with, you've missed this or that, and the other. So we would peer review each other's results. Okay, and then I just press the publish, and everybody gets the results.
Right. So it's quite a long-winded, but you say you can get it done in a few hours, which really impresses me. I would have thought it would have been days.
Well, yes, it would have been days. I don't think I'd be doing this if we were back in the paper logging days. That wouldn't interest me at all.
That's good. So how do the people then find out whether they've won, or you publish a list, do you?
Well, when you enter your log, you're asked if you want to be emailed the results through the robot. So the robot takes your email address, and then we'll contact you the moment the results are out and send you your results. Then you can go to the website. If you've provided appropriate details, you can down your UBN file for your uniques and busteds logs, so you can see where things went wrong. This will help you, especially if you've got errors, to know what you were doing wrong and correct them for next time. But usually it's silly mistakes missed up in here, because a lot of automation is used in RITI contesting, people click call signs off the screen. They don't actually look at the call sign and think that's not right. They'll just go, oh, it's sort of a call sign, I'll use it. And then they forget to correct it in their log. And that will lose them points, and it costs them a penalty of 1 QSO as well. So making an error is expensive.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, so that's the process. It's really quite simple. And thanks to Mike, whose software this is, our G0KYA, Mike Goody. His software is absolutely superb and is the backbone by which all the RSGB contests sits.
Right. And obviously you talk about the robot sending the results out, but I assume, well, I do know, I shouldn't assume, I know the results get published in Radcom as soon as possible after.
They're not.
Are they?
No,
I thought they were.
In the old days, we used to publish our results in Radcom, but that's all gone now. We haven't had results in Radcom for many years. It's all online.
And I'm going to get caught out now and beaten up badly by the boys, I know, for that one, because I do read Radcom.
Yeah, but when was the last time you saw results in Radcom?
Well, I'm not a contester, so I skipped that section. But yeah. So that's very, very good. And listen, thank you for your time on this, because it's been quite interesting. I'm sure that our listeners will be interested in what goes on in the background, because, like me, I guarantee a lot of people didn't know what went on in the background. So thanks very much for that, Simone.
No, it's my great pleasure. And I should give a big shout out to Pete, G4CLA, because without his robot, we would be, which looks after all the entries coming in, all the displaying of the results, and all the analysis data that he makes, it would be, our contesting service wouldn't be as good as it is.
Well, that's great. Listen, Simone, thank you very much for your time. Most appreciated, and we'll catch up with you again at another event.
Indeed we shall. Cheerio. Bye-bye now.
The ICQ podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Well, thanks there to Steve and Simone for your kind time at UK Hamfest. Talking about propagation tools and how the RSGB validate their competitions. Feedback coming in this episode. Malcolm Howe, Foxtrot 4, Victor Romeo X-Ray. Says, hi guys and girls. Good point there, Malcolm. Ruth and our fellow lady listeners are saying, make sure we're inclusive to all of them. He says, I was listening to ICQ podcast episode 308, where you mentioned and discussed the HEREC exams at Ham Expo show that took place on the 12th of October in Le Mans, and that someone taking the exam in French could bypass the UK or other exam requirements. So just to add his 2 cents worth, I did some digging and also asked a friend who is also a French trainer. The explanation is actually quite straightforward, as the exam that was available to take at Ham Expo in Le Mans was in fact the French ANFR amateur radio exam. Since Class 1, full plus CW exam, and Class 2, novice exams no longer exist in France and only in the HEREC classes remains, this exam is now basically equivalent of a UK full or US extra class. The exam consists of 2 parts: a regulation test, 20 questions on the regulations and 15 minutes to complete, and a technical test, 20 questions on the technique of electricity and radio electricity, and that duration is 30 minutes. Interestingly, if you fail to answer, you get 0 points, but if you give a wrong answer, you lose a point. And I'm also told the exam is now adaptive and explores any weaknesses identified through your responses. That's interesting, the fact you lose points if you guess an answer rather than just not knowing it. If this exam is passed, they're given an F4 call sign. And as it's a HEREC class amateur service operator certificate, it means that technically a foreign person taking the exam may return to the home country, and if that country is affiliated, they could have the equivalent certificate in the home country through the reciprocal scheme. In France, you have to prove residency a minimum 3 months before the reciprocal arrangements kick in, and CEPT is only valid 3 months continuous at any one time. So in brief, it's possible, although a bit dubious marketing or badly worded publicity, that yes, you could get a HEREC certificate at the Ham Expo, but in fact it was actually the French amateur radio exam that was on offer, and you then have to go through the reciprocal changeover process in the home country. It says, for your information, he's soon be moving to Luxembourg in a few months and may use this process to apply for an LX call sign and then can report how painless or otherwise the reciprocal agreement works. Would love to know. Would love to know, Malcolm. So let us know. Still enjoying the show every couple of weeks, so keep up the good work. 73's Malcolm. So Malcolm, trade me on for your email. That's about the limit of my French there, so I'm finished up. But as I say, great bit of information there from Malcolm about, as I say, this amateur radio exam there in France, Dad. And what do you think about the idea of if you give a wrong answer, you lose a point, and 0 points if you just don't know the answer? That's an interesting scoring scheme, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. But in the UK, we don't dock you marks if you get it wrong. So often we'll say to students, well, look, you should be able to get it down to 2 answers. And if you're really desperate, just choose an answer because you've got a chance of getting it right. And usually it's a 50-50 because 2 of the answers are really stupid. But no. If that's their examination criteria, then you just obey the exam criteria of that particular country. So I wouldn't knock the French for doing it that way. It has to be a fair system, and in their country, if that's the way they do it, that's the way they do it. And you just have to accept if you're doing it there, that's it.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. That's all. It just stops the guesswork as well for there. So it's interesting talk. So Malcolm, thanks for getting in touch with us there, and really do appreciate it. As we mentioned, top of the show, Jim Thompson, 2E0 Foxtrot Oscar Alpha, was our donor in this episode. Thank you very much, Jim, for setting up your monthly subscription donation. You can follow Jim's lead, and all you've got to do is visit icqpodcast.com/donate, where whatever value you find in the show, say one-off donation or subscription donation, helps keep us advert free. And as I say, I'm sure everyone we talk to loves the fact that there's no adverts in the show. So do your part and keep us advert free. In the meantime, keep up to date with everything that's going on. Follow us on Twitter at Colin Butler and at M1MRB. Join the Facebook group. Visit the website icqpodcast.com. And of course, the YouTube video is still coming thick and fast from Hamfest at youtube.com/ICQ podcast. There should be another video release after that, and then there's an interesting one we're still working on, guys. Please bear with us. There's a lot of editing on that, and time-wise, it's due out in November. Make sure you're on that subscription base as well. That one we're working on for November really will be one for YouTube, if you like. But we'll take an audio feature out of it, but all the content will be on YouTube on that one. I'm fairly certain that one. So check that out for now. You can get in contact with us like Malcolm does. Just go to the podcast page and click on the contact us button and drop us a mail and let us know your thoughts and feelings on the show and what you're doing in the hobby, which is always great to know. Well, that wraps up episode 309, Dad. We're on a weekly schedule at the moment, getting these shows out there. But that means more chocolate biscuits and cups of tea for Mrs. B, I'd suggest.
Oh, she always gets a cup of tea or chocolate biscuit, even if it isn't a record week. But that's the right thing to do. I mean, at the moment, she's working a different shift pattern to me, and so that's the way it is. But lovely to see her lovely to see her always. And she did make an appearance up there at Newark, so some of you got to meet her. And so we'll go off and make that cup of tea and biscuits soon. And I'll tell you more about the Cat's Bazaar, which is probably our last event we're going to do this year, later in the next show. So back to you, Colin.
Yeah, no problem at all. Let's wrap this one up then. So 73 is to you all, and we'll catch you all again next weekend. So 73 is all. See you then.
73.